My name is Anna Kinsella, and I would like to take you on an armchair tour of the Courtown District. This is a general view of the harbour area. The harbour was officially declared open on the 15th of August 1847, and from that time on, people from the surrounding hinterland came to Courtown to view the new harbour, and it became a popular place to come to see and to be seen, and to meet friends and neighbours. But the area was inhabited for many centuries before the harbour was built. Here is the earliest monument in the area, the moat at Ardamine. It is a pre-Christian burial mound. Traditionally, it is believed that the first man to die in Ireland is buried here. The legend has it that his name was Lara. In fact, the ancient name of this district was Ard Laran, or Lara's Mound. Here in the foreground we see St. Aidan's Cross. It is a 6th century cross. St. Aidan landed in Ardamine in 598 AD on his return from Wales, where he studied under St. David. He founded his first church at Ardamine before going on to found 32 other churches, which became the Diocese of Ferns, and St. Aidan became the first bishop of Ferns. The cross was excavated in 1990 and stands now at its full height. This is Donoughmore. Obviously from its name it has connections with St. Patrick. But the church we see here in the foreground was a Norman cell of the Priory of Glascarrig. Donoughmore is a very ancient burial ground, and every year on the last Sunday of July, a patron is held there, and people who have relatives buried here gather for Mass in the graveyard. There are some very ancient gravestones in Donoughmore. Some of them have very interesting inscriptions, and this one in the foreground is engraved with a depiction of the man in the moon. There is a Norman motte and bailey at Glascarrig. It belonged to the Priory of Glascarrig. After the Norman invasion, the lands of Glascarrig were granted to Raymond le Gros, who built a priory here and brought the Benedictine monks to it. The monks were in Glascarrig from the early 13th century to the middle of the 16th century. Part of the walls of the old priory may still be seen. There is the long house or dormitory where the monks slept. It was being used as a cattle shed when this picture was taken. Here we see the high stone cross of Kilbride. It stands just inside the perimeter wall of the Courtown Woods at Ballinatray on the Gorey Courtown Road near the picnic area. This is an early Christian cross, 5th or early 6th century. It stands over 7 feet in height. It is slightly broken on one shoulder. During Hurricane Charlie in 1990, it was in grave danger of being smashed by falling trees. The local Heritage Awareness Group cleared away the fallen trees and placed an identification stone beside the cross. The cross is inscribed front and back with the pagan circle superimposed with the Christian cross. It's not pierced in the manner of the later Celtic crosses such as Clonmacnoise or Moon, etc., which are pierced and highly ornamented with depictions of the Gospel stories. This is Kiltennel graveyard. The grave we see there in the centre is that of Thomas, the 4th Earl of Courtown. He was the man who was responsible for the building of the harbour at Courtown. Kiltennel itself goes back much farther than that. Sennel, who built the first church here, was St. Patrick's bell ringer. There are the ruins of a church here, but they are of Norman or 13th century, which was in use up to the middle of the 16th century. After the Reformation, Kiltennel Church was found to be too small, and a replacement church was built close by at Prospect, but this was later taken down, and the stones from it were used in the building of the present Kiltennel Church. Here is Kiltennel Church. It stands within the Courtown domain, just inside the archway gate to Courtown House. It was built in early Gothic style in 1770 and is a memorial church to the Earl of Courtown's family. In 1880, a new wing was added and other improvements were made. This is the Church of St. John the Evangelist in Ardamine, built in the 1860s. It's built in the Gothic Revival style. The architect here was George Edmund Street, who designed the Royal Courts of Justice in London, which are frequently seen on television. He also designed the restoration of Christ Church Cathedral in Dublin. This church is of limestone rubble masonry, of a type quarried locally. The church is of undressed stone inside as outside. It seats about 100 people. The church was built as a memorial to the Richards family, who were another landlord family in the area. It has some fine examples of stained glass windows by Clayton and Bell. An unusual feature of this church is the corbelled porch, built and roofed all in one piece. The stone for the porch is pepperite and was quarried at Knockavoca, which was the inauguration site of the MacMurrough Kings of Leinster. And this is Star of the Sea Church, River Chapel. It was built in 1881 in Victorian Gothic style. The architect here was J.J. McCarthy, also known as the Pugin of Ireland. The red brick was made in the local brickyard, and there are some fine examples of stained glass windows in this church. These are by Early Brothers. There are others by Harry Clark and the Abbey Stained Glass Company. The Stations of the Cross in this church are wood carvings by John Hawke. Here we see the brickyard where the bricks used in the building of that church were made. The brickyard was started in the 1840s during the famine times. Lord Courtown brought a family called Funge, who were experienced in brick and tile making, to the area. Drainage was a big part of the famine relief work, and the drainage pipes were manufactured here. The pipes were of very small bore, however, and weren't all that successful, as the Macklemore lands are notoriously wet and heavy. The local clay was found to be suitable for terracotta, and bricks, tiles and garden ornaments were made here. Courtown brick was widely used for building in the area. The bricks were also carted by horse and cart to the railway station in Gorey and brought by rail for use in buildings in Arklow, Dublin and elsewhere. The brickyard employed up to 50 men up to 1970 when it closed. Locally, the houses built of Courtown brick tended to be called Red, the Red Row in Ballinatray, and the Red Houses, as these houses at Mount Alexander were called. Lord Courtown built these houses for his estate workers. And this was Courtown House, no longer extant. It was built in the 1770s for the first Earl of Courtown. It was sacked in 1798 and later restored. It was raided for arms in 1916. It was the seat of the Earl of Courtown up to 1933, when the 6th Earl died. In 1947 it was purchased by the Irish Tourist Board, and a training school for hotel staff was run there for a number of years. It was then found to have dry rot and unfortunately was completely demolished. This is a picture of the construction of the harbour at Courtown. It was taken from a watercolour by James Walter Hoare, who was a cousin of Lord Courtown. Prior to the building of the harbour, the fishermen had no safe refuge for their boats, and they pulled them in on the strand and all the little creeks along the coast. The first stone of the lock of the harbour was laid in 1826. The original pier, as designed by Alexander Nimmo, was to run in a northeasterly direction from this point beneath Branogue Head. At low tide, the original foundation stones can be seen here. Unfortunately, the pier was washed away in a huge southeasterly storm while it was still in the course of construction. It was never rebuilt, and the south pier was built in its present position against the advice of every local fisherman. This is the pier as it is today, and Courtown Harbour has suffered continuous silting from day one. Various methods of clearing the bar have been tried, for example, lock gates, dredging, crane and grab. On the skyline here you can see the jib of a crane, and the work of keeping the bar clear is never ending. In the background is Tara Hill. This picture was taken about 1900. These small boats on the right of the picture are called yawls, and they were used for fishing. 6 oarsmen and a man at the tiller handled these, and sometimes very large catches of herring were brought back. The larger boats were coasters. They plied between Courtown and Dublin, carrying agricultural produce such as corn, hams, butter, eggs, sand for glassmaking, etc. And on the return journey they brought goods such as paraffin oil, barrels of porter, salt and oakum, which was a preservative dye for nets and sails. Courtown was a planned village, and you will see that the houses in Courtown Street were of the same level. 1981 saw the beginning of a new marina. You will notice that the skyline in the village has changed. Some of the houses have been elevated. A new car park, seen in the background, has been provided. This view of the harbour is towards the south at Branogue Head. And this is an aerial view of the caravan fields. Tara Hill and Crochan are in the background. This is another view of the harbour area. Every year on a particular Sunday in July, the boats are blessed. Bunting is put up in carnival fashion. Crews man the boats, and the boats are blessed, and all seafarers, past and present, are prayed for. It's also a fun day. This is one of the events. A raft race from the North Beach to the harbour. The crews are in fancy dress. These are dressed as Vikings. As the crafts are homemade and fairly flimsy, the inshore lifeboat stands by. Another feature of Sea Sunday is an exhibition of sea rescue. Sometimes a helicopter rescue and sometimes a demonstration of ship-to-shore rescue. The Arklow lifeboat stands by for this, and the local life-saving apparatus, which is now defunct, is on display. In the past, whenever a vessel was reported in distress within reach of the shore, the Coast Guards were called by the release of a rocket. A line was sent out which affixed to the mast of the stricken vessel. The line was used to lever out a breeches buoy, into which the people aboard the stricken vessel would sit one by one and be levered ashore. It was a dangerous operation for the occupant of the buoy, as heavy waves could break a person's back. These are the Coast Guards. This being just an exercise, everyone is fairly relaxed about it. This is known locally as the Rocket House. It was used for storing the apparatus used by the Coast Guards. In the background you see the old limestone quarry. Up to 2004 the lime kiln could be seen, but has since been demolished. These were the Coast Guard houses, built in the 1860s as residences for the Coast Guards, which at that stage was a uniformed organisation. However, at the outbreak of World War I, the Coast Guards were called up into the British Navy, and coast watching was handed over to the local fishermen. The houses were demolished in the 1960s, and a Garda barracks and some houses for the Gardaí were built on the site. Up to the 1990s, this boat trawled for flatfish such as plaice, sole, brill, etc., and locals and visitors alike gathered around on its return to buy fish straight from the sea. This is all that remains of what was once an oyster tank. From about 1880 to 1903, there was a thriving